Okay, everybody, so we're going to keep on going on your first week review packet, which looks like this on the front. Okay, so for this first problem, this is adding fractions. It's not a word problem or anything. You don't need to write a solution sentence because there's really nothing that you could write. But let's make a quick estimate. So 2/5 is more or less than a half. Think about it for a second. Okay, it's less than a half because the halfway point of fifths would be 2.5 fifths. Or if we think of it on a number line, it's like here's 0, here's 1. If I go 2/5 of the way to 1, I still have 3/5 of the way left to go. Whoops, not a very good jump, but so I have more than half of the way still to go, right? So 2/5 is less than a half. 3/10 is less than a half. So my answer should be less than 1. Actually, I'll even just write it like this. So this, when I add those things together, they should be less than 1 whole. Because if I add two things that are both less than a half together, I should get something less than 1. So now I have something to guide myself. If I get an answer that's more than a whole, I know I've done something wrong. It's probably going to be over a half though, because 2/5 is already pretty close to a half. So somewhere probably between a half and a whole. All right, so now if I need to add fractions together, they have to have a common denominator. Maybe write that on your own paper and try to make sure that you remember that word, those words. So a good common denominator, if I look here, I have fifths and tenths. So I can see that a common multiple for both of those two numbers is 10. And that way I don't have to change the 3/10 at all. So if I want to make my 2/5 into tenths, take my 2/5. I know I eventually want it to be tenths over here. I know in order to do that, I'm going to need to cut up those fifths into more pieces. And so I think, how many times more pieces do I need? And I need twice as many pieces. So 5 times 2 is 10. If I've multiplied by 2 on the bottom, I have to do 2 on the top. I need to use some version of 1 because I don't want to change the value of my fraction. So some of you earlier were doing things like this. You'd go 2/5 and then you would just say it's equal to 2/10 because you wanted the tenths. You knew that part. But is 2/5 the same as 2/10? No, it's not. That doesn't work. So we multiply by the same thing in the numerator as we did in the denominator. 2 times 2 is 4. 2/5 is the same as 4/10. Great. So now I'm just going to rewrite my problem. 4/10 plus 3/10 is equal to 7/10. Great. 7/10, I notice, is less than a whole. Great. And more than a half. So it kind of fits with what I was hoping. My answer, and I'm done. Moving on to the next one. Okay, the next one printed so badly, and I'm sorry. So hopefully some of you guys just skipped this if you'd been going through. I'm going to show you the correct numbers here, and then you can pause the video and try to solve it, and then come back and answer the question, or watch the rest of the video later. So let's read the question first. It says, Sue needs to practice clarinet. That's an instrument you might have seen in Miss O's, for 10 hours this week. On the first day of this week, she practiced for, and this should be 1.5 hours. That should just say 1.5. On the second day of this week, she practiced for, this should say 1 1/4 hours. How many more hours does Sue need to practice this week? And then there's your options. So pause here if you haven't solved this yet because the numbers were so terrible, and try and solve it, and then watch the video later. If you're ready to see the answer, this one is a little on the tricky side because it's something that we haven't done yet. So if you're feeling kind of confused about this in general, you can skip it right now, stop this video, and then come back to it another day, especially after next week, because our project next week is going to be working on things just like this. But if you're ready to give it a try, we can think about, this is a nice problem to write an equation for. So we know the solution sentence would sound like, Sue needs to practice blank more hours. And again, that's coming right from the problem. How many more hours does Sue need to practice? Sue needs to practice some number more hours. And so if I write my equation, what I would say is we already know how much she needs to practice all together. So I would say that we kind of know the total here. What we don't know is how much more she needs to do. So I'm going to say 1.5 plus 1 1/4, that's what she's already done, plus some number, so I'll put h, is going to equal 10. And that h is however much more she has to go. Since I already have this set up like this, I also think this will be a good problem to use adding up, because I already have this written as a missing addend expression or equation, I guess, because I don't know the h. So if I think about it this way, here's her total number of hours in the whole week. Here's 0, here's 10. Here would be 5. And then we'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Not perfect, but it'll be okay. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. So if she starts by practicing 1.5, right? She's done that. And then this is 1.5. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then we already have 10. If you haven't solved this problem yet, and you're just watching, maybe try copying down this number line on your own page or in your notebook, and try to go from here and see what you would need to do to figure out how much more she needs to practice. If you're ready to keep watching, you can see what I'm going to do. So first, after she did 1.5, like she already kind of made this jump, right? She's already practiced that much. Check. Then she did another 1 1/4 hour. So I need to add that first before I figure out what the rest of it's going to be. So first I'll add the 1 whole. That one's an easy jump to make, right? So then that gets me to, if I add plus 1, this was plus 1.5. That's her first day of the week. So that gets me to 2.5. Because 1.5 plus 1 is 2.5. And then I still need to add 1/4 more. So I've done the 1, I need to do 1/4. 1/2 plus 1/4. Hopefully some of you can do this in your head. If I'm thinking about 1/2 plus 1/4, some of you might know right away that's 3/4. If not, we can use the same old common denominator. 1/2 is the same as 2/4 plus 1/4 is equal to 3/4. Okay, pause, make sure you're understanding. So altogether, when I've added 1 1/4, that gets me to 2 3/4. I'm sorry, I'm having to squeeze that in, but this number here is 2 3/4. In fact, this is what I'll do instead of squeezing it. Ugh, I need a new eraser. This one's bad. Hopefully you guys have the materials you need at home. Okay, so this is 2 3/4. Okay. Now we need to get to 10. That's what we're going to try and figure out. So this is like an adding up problem. The first thing I will add is, and basically what I'm finding here is that I have 2 3/4. Like if I add these two together, that's 2 3/4. And now I have to figure out what, I have to add what h is to get to 10. So let me get to a nice friendly number, a whole. First I'm going to add 1/4. That gets me to 3. Now, actually all I need to do is get to 10. So I'm going to make one huge jump from 3 all the way to 10. And that's 7. And then all together, what I just added was 7 1/4. she still needs to practice 7 1/4 more hours. And that kind of makes sense to me because this is like less than 2 hours, less than 2 hours. If she'd done 4 hours so far, she would have needed to do 6 more. But she did a little less than 2 on each of those days, so she needs to add a little, she needs to practice a little more than 6 hours. So A is my answer, and I'm done. Way to go, everybody. Keep it up.